Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and our special guest today here on the program is going to share a very interesting story. We'll talk about this with Matt Constantino, if I have that pronounced correctly. Matt, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast, if you call it that. So this is an interesting experience for me.
I'll be gentle.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have a fascinating book, especially by title. Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity, Living for Today. And that first word is so important. We talk about that all the time on the program. It's so important to be in that place. Tell us about this program, this particular title, this work that you have put together. Are we calling this sort of a memoir of a period in time?
Yeah. So just stepping back, this book was not meant to be really published until after my the second book that I'm coming out with is published. It's really stemmed from an experience that I had. In a Caribbean island. I don't want to state the island because this happened in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to stay away from that because I don't think this was an isolated incident. And there have been articles in many major publications, and the British government just issued travel warnings for many of the islands that we would be talking about. This really was the result of what happened to me, and I started journaling my thoughts every day. Would it be okay just to start with what happened and sort of who I am, and then
let's begin there. Let's begin there with what did happen, because unfortunately it is now sadly a common occurrence, isn't it?
Yeah, we were my girlfriend Angie and I had we'd an epic pre-COVID experience. Fell in love. Went to all around the world traveling as I met investors and on vacations. And then, COVID shut in, and I had much more success in fundraising where I run a private equity firm. So I buy companies for a living and grow them, largely family-owned businesses. And, during, COVID hit, and I had a lot of things to manage, i.e. the 7 companies I was on the board of and controlled 6 of them. And, we had immense success until March of 2020. We had raised twice as much money as we'd expected, and larger than my wildest dreams. I come from very humble beginnings in southeastern Boston, Massachusetts, southeastern Boston, and I when COVID hit, my only job was to make sure that my family was safe and that my companies were going to survive. As you know, everything got shut down. I'm not telling any new stories. I, in particular, owned 40 plus gyms, fitness centers around the country, around the say from Virginia down to Georgia, and they were all shut down. And we had to furlough all of our employees and figure a strategy to get through it. So COVID was a very trying time, not just in my social activity and my seeing other people. I was vigilant about the COVID trap, and I really didn't spend a lot of we spent a lot of time with our friends in the backyard of my house in Long Island, doing drum circles, yoga, meditation, singing, dancing, and whatnot. And then we came to a point where that was really the spring, summer of 2021. And my girlfriend Angie had gone to Hawaii to study and to write into video her view on what was going on in the world and how to protect yourself from COVID. And we had had a trying time during COVID. The first 6 months of it was never seeing me. Just we lived in a two-bedroom apartment. Well, first we lived at the Bahia Hotel in Miami. They shut down that on us and we moved to Singer Island where my mother was staying. And we're in a two-bedroom apartment. I was hooked to the TV and my computer 18 hours a day. And then we ended up flying up to Long Island to I rented a house up there. My house was being occupied by my mother and my ex-wife and daughter. So it was a separate house. And after a time during the fall, we really didn't see a lot of people because where I was going, what's called the Hamptons in New York, was a pretty desolate area during the winter. People, largely retreated back to New York or to other places. So it was very quiet. And Angie and I were having a hard time, just the two of us being together 24/7. And excuse me, music, we have a break going by. Just bring 2 seconds. Um, I get this every day.
Mm-hmm.
And she decided to go to Hawaii, and I decided to stay in Long Island. 6 weeks later, it was a tough time for us. I'll put it that way. 6 weeks later, we were talking every day. She called me and said, "Let's get together. Let's put this relationship back together because it was a beautiful relationship for a long time." And I said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "You pick the place, I'll be there." And I had not flown during COVID. My daughter was living in Germany during COVID because of some previous health scares. And I said, "Sure, where do you want to go?" And she said, "This island in the Caribbean was the easiest to get to for both of us from New York and from Oahu." And I said, "Sure." And so with trepidation, I hopped on a plane and nobody was wearing masks. I had taken my COVID test the day before. We landed, cleared customs, cleared the security, excuse me, not customs, security. And I went to this very fabulous hotel, and it was a five-star hotel. We don't do fancy vacations very often, but once a year. And we were going to stay in a villa by ourselves. I was hoping to paddleboard and do yoga and get back to get into very good shape because I had been working so hard. It sure wasn't where I wanted to be. And I called my mother and we landed and said, "This is really amazing. I feel beautiful. I feel great. It's beautiful here." Got to the hotel. Is this okay? Is this the right place to be speaking of?
Oh, yes.
Cool. We got to the hotel and the hotel manager came running up to greet me, super kind. "I'm Mr. Constantino. My name's Javier. I'd love to hope taking care of you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "But your room's not ready yet." I said, "Okay." He said, "We'd like to have a drink at the bar." I said, "No, I'd love to go paddleboarding. It's been my passion of mine." And he said, you can't go today. It's too windy. So just have a drink at the bar. Your girlfriend will be arriving. Your wife will be, he thought my wife would be arriving an hour and a half later, and we'll bring her right to the restaurant." So I got to the restaurant, and they sat me at the bar, and they said, "We're making these fruity local cocktails." I explained through translation that I was gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free for nearly 15 years at the time, exclusively. And I said, "What can you make me?" He said, "Well, there's not much I can make you except vodka." I said, "All right, I'll have a vodka with soda water, a lime." And I felt great. And within an hour, Angie arrived and she was directed to me. And I looked like a shadow of myself. My heart was pounding. I was at about 280 beats a minute. I was sweating. I couldn't really stand up. And the only assumption that Angie could make was that I had been drinking or doing drugs. I had no history of doing drugs, anything. So it was confusing to me, and it was confusing to her. She thought I had just made a mistake, gotten drunk on a day we were supposed to reunite after 6 weeks, and she was shattered. And I had no explanation. I said something happened. I don't know what it was. But we went straight back to the hotel, to the villa that we had. It was beautiful. It had, 2 bedrooms, a living room, really beautiful spa, bath, had its own pool. And we thought we'd just spend time there and on the water. And she loves the water as well as more than I do, actually. And she sat there watching my heart race, like she's never seen anything like it before in her life. And I felt like a 3-year-old child. I couldn't walk. I had to crawl to the bathroom or stagger to the bathroom. And she called my mother pretty quickly and said, this is what's happening. And my mother said, it's, his phone isn't working, so that's probably frustrating for him. He didn't like flying, doesn't like flying in general, but this was pretty difficult where people weren't wearing masks in the middle of COVID. Um, Three, he doesn't have a history of any drug use. However, she said one thing I can tell you is that Matt gets very, very bad migraines after football games. He would um, have to sit in a dark room with ice pads on his head. I played quarterback in high school and a little bit in college, and sit in a dark room, cold room for the night because I'd get massive migraines. So maybe it's the heat. So there was a hope there. We decided to go to dinner. Well, and that evening, Angie said, "You must be just having an anxiety attack. That's what it seems like." I said, "This feels different than anything I've ever felt before." So she said, "Why don't you have a martini and just to calm yourself down?" Well, I proceeded to have 3 martinis very quickly because I was in a complete panic state. And I'm pretty in touch with my body. I've run marathons. I've played every sport known to man. And I just knew something was wrong. My diet was pretty strict, and I knew something was wrong. So, and she didn't. She knew something was wrong. She didn't know why. And so we went home. Next morning, we went to the beach, and I couldn't do anything. She went in the water. I watched her, and I was staggered back to the chair. And we called the nurse. We called Javier, the host, the manager of the hotel, and he sent a nurse. The nurse said, "Oh, he's probably just having anxiety. Here's some sedative. There's a sedative for him to take." We did that. Nothing. Next day, we went to the beach again. I was really frustrated because Angie didn't believe that something had happened, and I felt like I was a liar and I was disappointing her, and it was just devastating. But I also couldn't breathe. I couldn't walk. So I fell on the ground on the beach while she was swimming, and we called an ambulance. And the last thing I wanted to do was be in a hospital in a foreign island. And I they brought me to the hospital, and the ambulance brought me, and they stuck me in a emergency ward. And there were maybe 50 or 100 people around me. There was only one bed left, and they stuck me in that bed. I started doing tests, and they found out that they thought I had COVID. They told me I had COVID, which didn't ring true to me because I'd just been tested. And this all came on an hour after I learned it. It didn't make sense to me. So Angie stayed over with me, and she's glad and slipped up in bed while my heart was pounding. I couldn't breathe. They had an oxygen mask on me. They came back the next morning and told me that they'd have to wait another day because the COVID results aren't in. They sent Angie home a little bit rudely. And they started just sticking me with needles. They showed her a chart saying Matt's heart and lungs are surrounded by water. And we think that's consistent with COVID. And then in some part it could have been. And I was watching body bags go by me all the time. And that night they brought me down to an isolation ward. I was one of two people on the floor, and then there was an attendant. The woman next to me died the next day and a half later, and I was the only person on the ward. Um, and then the second day they came in, they stabbed me with needles, not with no regard for my the pain they were putting me in. It took them 7 times. They hit me the first time, but never had a nurse. They wanted it one time. Um, so it was, and they were very abusive. They locked me into a room that was 8 by 10, had a small glass window, and they put the lock on the outside, so I couldn't get out. Which was
Wow.
pretty strange in and of itself. So every time I had to go to the bathroom, I would knock on the door, and they'd make me wait a half an hour because they weren't doing anything. The attendant would come by and drag me by my arms to the bathroom, slam me against walls, throw me in the bathroom. I would knock to get out because they locked the door from the outside again. And then they dragged me back after whatever time they wanted to. And they kept saying in Spanish, which I don't speak, but I know some of the terms through Latin. Why won't you die? And they said everybody else is. And they would just slam me as well as throw me back in the room and stick me an oxygen mask on me. And the next day they came in and Angie showed up and the woman next to us had passed. And she showed up, she saw a body bag go by, didn't see me, and she wondering if it was me. Came in, they said, Matt doesn't have COVID, so you're lucky there. His symptoms are more consistent with pancreatic cancer. And I'm key man for our farm with my farm. I get physicals on a very regular basis, mandated. Had just done one 3 months ago. I'd never heard anything about my pancreas or anything being wrong with my body. I'd had a perfect health inspection, a checkup, and I'll pause there. It was confusing that they're adding potential problem issues with me rather than starting with 10 and going to 1, which was the way I understood doctors to operate. So at that point, we're very confused. We're trying to get somebody who speaks English to tell us what's going on. The doctor didn't speak much English. The one doctor spoke English, the other one spoke broken English. The English one, she was very stern and very direct and very off-putting, to be honest with you. And she said, we're going to start looking into chemo treatments for his cancer. And it was all perplexing. Angie was out of her mind. She was watching me suffer to breathe and suffer to, my heart was, you could see it coming out of my chest an inch at a time. Every beat, it was still at 280 beats a minute. None of the drugs administered to me were sedatives, which is a good thing in as much as I remember it, bad in as much as I remember it. I don't know yeah, so the third day they said, no, it's not pancreatic cancer, he has lung cancer. And I just looked baffled, and I'm not a smoker. So she said, oh, some people can contract lung cancer without smoking, being smokers. Okay, this makes no sense. Again, more needles. I got shot 72 times with needles. I started counting. And my arms turned black as this shirt that I'm wearing right now. I looked like I was wearing a scuba suit. My back was bruised everywhere. My neck was bruised. My stomach was bruised from all the banging, being slammed around. And then at that point, we just started calling people. We called my mother. My mother was in Aruba with her daughter, Carlene, my youngest sister, and their kids. And Carlene had contracted COVID. Now she has 2 children in a hospital, both of whom have very uncertain outcomes. She had to stay with my sister. We then called Maria, who I'll call my assassin. She's my partner. She's been with me for 9 years. There's nothing she can't do. Nothing she can't do. She pulls off the impossible tasks. And we said, I just kept saying, I don't think they're treating me right here. I don't think they care. I think they prefer me to die. I need to get out of here. And so that was her task. And we didn't think it was possible to do that during COVID. Maria set on a course with my closest friend, Jim. Jim is a lawyer. We went to college together. We met the first week of school at Wesleyan University, Connecticut. And he became a lawyer, and he became my lawyer, and a corporate lawyer, as well as personal, and my best friend, and my godfather, his children, and he to mine. And yeah, so we get set the wheels in motion and said, Maria, we need to find a way to get me out of here. And the doctors insisted that I couldn't fly on a commercial plane. And I couldn't fly at all because it was too detrimental, potentially, the death threat to me. And so Angie and my mother and Jim and some other people spent the next few days, next day, so 24 hours, trying to figure out if it was okay, it was safer for me to fly or to remain in this hospital. And ultimately, we all made the decision. Me very weakly, I was down 15 pounds and still couldn't breathe or talk really. We ultimately made the decision to try to get out. And Maria found a medevac team, the private plane, to come down. She went to the hospital. She was very smart. Her dad is was a physician's assistant, a very well regarded one. So Angie, throughout her life growing up, she would always go to the hospital and watch her dad, take care of patients. That was his passion. And she went straight to a nursing home facility and rented a oxygen mask, which was a brilliant move. And she got to the hospital knowing that the doctors were going to resist. And she said, we're prepared to take Matt back to New York. Doctor immediately threw up her arms and started yelling and saying that Matt can't fly, he will die. And she said, well, we're prepared to take that risk and sign a waiver. So as the woman left, Angie went to the nurse and said, can I get the medical records so I can bring them to New York? And she said, we can't print them for you. We'll send them to you digitally. Okay, so then they charged her $10,000 for this, even though they told us it would be zero because of COVID. And she dropped our credit card down, paid it, and she ran as quickly as she could to get a wheelchair and sprinted me to, like I was in a chariot, to this Escalade that brought us back to the hotel. And we just ran out of the hotel. We got back and Angie put the mask on me. She and Javier and some other people had to carry me to the bed. And it was more of the same. Nothing. I would respond to nothing. They gave me more sedative, didn't work. And she sat there just watching me, potentially dying. People were dying all over the ward. And it was always explained to be COVID. And I just kept telling Angie, something happened. I don't know. I can't explain it. This is something that happened. And I keep harping on that word because it was inexplicable. It was unbelievable. And so we had to wait almost 36 hours to get onto a plane because the local government was restricting air flights to only residents of the island. And so we waited. They put together a crew of two nurses and a pilot to come to get me. And when they finally got clearance to fly, they flew directly to me. And got me on the plane. It got me, they treated me, they tried to see what was going on. They said, this is very dire. And these are nurses that have been trained for 50 years in total for the two of them. And they said, they told Angie, this is really, really bad. We're going to have to fly at 10,000 feet. Typically, a plane would fly at 30. Because if he goes over, if he collapses, we're going to have to drop down into a hospital. They mapped a flight, a 7-hour flight, which is usually 4. From the island to 3 to 4, from the island to New York. And we had a map that went over every major hospital in every major city. And we got to the airport. And she went to security to check us in. I was driven once to the plane. We arrived at the plane and promptly I was still on the gurney. We're promptly a Jeep pulled up, a military Jeep with 3 men dressed as military police. with machine guns, and they pointed them at me and at the nurses, and they started searching the plane. Said they were looking for drugs, and the nurse said, we need to get Matt on this plane right now. And I had a gun to my head, a gun inches from my head. And after a moment, I just said, let's shoot me. You're trying to kill me anyway. I'm going to die on the plane. Shoot me and let's get it over with. And it was really hostile. It was very hostile 10 minutes. After that, Angie and Javier came out and they saw this mess with guns being pointed at us. And Javier started talking to the military police, and they clearly knew who they were. And they became very friendly to him. And then about 15 minutes later, they just drove away. They didn't know what happened. And so what was just occurring. Javier, Angie hugged Javier and said goodbye. And We got on the plane, and they immediately started dripping me with morphine because I had not had anything to calm me down in 4.5 days. And I didn't respond to morphine. I've never responded to any pills in my life. I process things very quickly. Just it's just a function of my God or my body, whatever it is, what I've treated it, how I treated it. And I just didn't respond to it. And at one point, I said, "Can I have more?" And they said, "You've given me more than could kill a horse." And I said, "Well, I'm wide awake." They said, "Close your eyes, Matt, and just go to sleep." I said, "I'm not going to close my eyes. And I'll never open them again." So they ultimately they saw that my vitals were getting worse. And my blood oxygen level was below 70 at the time. Blood oxygen level should be 95 plus. Below 90 is considered dangerous. 70 is considered, a death sentence.
Hmm.
And so they brought Angie to the back of the plane, which wasn't that large a plane. And one of the nurses, and she said, "Look," she said, I have to be honest with you. I have to tell you exactly what I'm seeing here." She said, "I don't think Matt's going to make this flight. And I have a sat phone. Why don't you have him call his mom, say goodbye?" And so they came to me, and Angie was crying. The nurse was pretty disheveled. And they had seen this. They'd seen things like this 1,000 times, but never this. And they said to me, "Do you want to call your mom?" I said, "Once again, I'm not going to die tonight. I will not let go. I'll let God." And I just started praying, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't, get gasp. I was gasping for air. It was like drinking. It was like trying to breathe out of a straw, and it was really painful, and I was very uncomfortable. And I just didn't respond to the morphine until we landed. We landed at Teterboro Airport after a hellish 7-hour flight. I have pictures, photos of what I looked like on the plane, and it's just unimaginable. I got to Mount Sinai. My mother was there to greet me. And my friend Jim, his wife, was worked for the head of surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital, and they they had for 18 hours. I sat in the waiting room with my mother. I was a mess. I did as much as try to tell them I should just go home and we'll come back some other day. So I was a mess on the morphine. I also told them, tried to give this ambulance directions as to how to get home. Get to the hospital, sorry. And they were just laughing at me. And then about for 16 hours, they had 10 or 11 doctors around me, all poking and taking samples of all this my blood and whatnot. And nobody could figure it out. And they were talking, and I was still with conscious. And I, I, I finally just said to them, "Guys, I can hear you. I'm not going to die. I know you can't figure it out, but I'm not going to die tonight." And so they said, "Look, all we know is that you have water around. You have 17 liters of water in your lungs. And you have 4 around your heart. So you're drowning and having a heart attack at the same time. You're at heart failure." They said, "We need to get the water out." And so they brought me to the ICU, gave me very heavy diuretics. So I was, it was embarrassing. I was going to the bathroom a gallon of water every couple hours. I was going every 15 minutes, but it was at least a gallon an hour. And it took them a couple of days to get all the diuretics out. And the reason for that was, one, because it was unsafe, but two, they wanted to paddle me, which we do on the TV show, TV
Mm-hmm.
shows. And they were just waiting for all the water to get out because it would be dangerous to do without that to get me back into the room. Yeah. They finally got there. It's actually quite a hilarious. It's funny in the context of what I was going through. The doctor who was supposed to press the button to paddle me. First, I told my mother, take a video because I want to show my friends me popping up to the ceiling. I thought that actually happened when you get an EKG. Sorry, when you get paddled, that's not the case. You don't bounce out, you don't flop up to the ceiling. So that wasn't very interesting. But the doctor was 2 hours late for my surgery, and there's 6 doctors in the room, and they all wanted to press the button. It became a huge negotiation with them because they never pressed the button before. And I'm sitting there just telling my mother to take the video. She's horrified, and she broke down many, many times, just saying, "I can't believe this is happening. We don't know why." So they got me back into arrhythmia, a rhythmic beat through the paddle. I don't know much about medicine. I'm bored of a lot of healthcare companies, but I don't know much about medicine, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I came out and I could breathe again for the first time in 8 days, 9 days actually. Sorry. And they said, "We're going to give you 16 pills to take a day." I said, what are they? And they said, they're one, some are heart medications. Because your heart's at 35% of capacity right now. The doctor privately told my mother that he didn't think I was going to make it, given the state of my heart. Then they told me they're going to give me medications. And the heart medications made sense. And they said, we're also going to give you blood pressure medications. And both my mother and I looked at each other befuddled because my my blood pressure is 105 over 65 since I was 16 years old. It's very low. The normal is 130 over 90 right now. That's the normal accepted range. You see 120 over 80. Guess we're living in a more stressful environment world now. Um, so I questioned them. I said, why would you do that? What if you reduce, you lower my blood pressure? And they said the medication we think will be more of a benefit to your heart than a detriment to the risk of you crashing. They said, however, we want you to stay for 4 or 5 days for treatment, just for observation. But took the pills and they put me in a different ward. And I just, sat and read and talked to the very, very kind nurse. And they still had no idea what had happened to me. But the 11 doctors, the smartest doctors on the planet, some of the smartest doctors on the planet, didn't know what happened to me.
Hmm.
It's very perplexing. It is during that period, they'd called down to the hospital on the island and said, "Could you mind sending up Matt's medical records?" And I said, well, initially they ignored us. Then it progressed toward, yes, we'll send them. And it progressed toward an insinuation that I had never been there at the hospital. But everything became very, very curious to me. And I'm not um, I'm not delusional about, I'm pretty well, I can understand people and I knew something was wrong. So the looks on their faces were wrong when I was at the hospital on the island. And it looks in the hospital looked devastating in the hospital, in the New York hospital. So they finally released me. They told me to take these 16 pills the rest of your life. Again, your heart rate, your heart is functioning at 35% of normal. You can walk 30 minutes a day the rest of your life is sort of what they're alluding to or telling me. But don't expect to be normal.
Hmm.
Is this too dense or is this okay?
No, it's fine. I'm curious more so about your not just your emotional, but even your spiritual state. You said earlier that you were, saying, look, if I'm going to die, let's get it over with and let me move on to whatever it is that's next. What is your present, if I can put it this way, your present philosophical positioning as opposed to maybe how you were raised?
Sure. I was raised a half Italian, half Irish family. My parents divorced when I was three, just in my threes. And we were raised Catholic, strictly Catholic. Went to church on Sunday. My grandfather was really I don't know, a spokesman for their church. He ran the baseball league. He went to clean the church with me on Saturdays and Sundays all the time. Deeply religious, very rules based, I would say, very Catholic rules based. In my 20s, really started focusing on spirituality and different practices. I studied yoga in Costa Rica for 4 months. I had a view on Buddhism, a view on Hinduism. I studied Kabbalah for over a year. Just got to understand that most of these spiritualities have the same, and some fit and some don't fit with your nature. On coming out of the this experience, I really started focusing on shamanism, and that's really what I've gravitated toward over the past few years. And my view is that it fits my needs, it suits my needs. Spiritually, I'm deeply spiritual always. I can't say religious. I don't go to church regularly. I pray every day. I meditate every day, but I just think of myself on a spiritual plane. That it's very important to me to always do what is right for I call it win-win. I have to win. If we are negotiating a trend and a partnership, I have to win, you have to win, and the universe has to win. So I think about it as if those three things aren't in place, I wouldn't do them. I always use the term whiter than white. And my view on death, I don't really have a view on death, and I think I was there during that 10-day period that I was in the hospital. Over 150 people died, and it was all blamed on COVID. Whole families would die in hotel rooms over after going out for the night. And I just realized I've always just realized that, I guess I did took it for granted, but I'm blessed that some things that have happened to me in my life that I should not be here as a result of. I'm here. So some powers, like, some higher power. I don't have a view on reincarnation. I don't have a view on the afterlife. I just know that the best thing I can do is have faith in some governing. Something happened to create this universe. Something it happened to create this masterful ecosystem for us to live in, and it's everything's. If you decide to not remember the Celestine prophecy from 20 years ago,
Hmm.
I don't know if you read it.
Oh, yes.
Um, I was thinking about the insights, and one of the insights is that there will one day become a period of collective realization that everything's tied. There, my mother always likes to say, God, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous, and there is no coincidence. And you start to think that coincidence is now where something that was supposed to happen to you if your eyes are open. And you don't just, there's an idea that during the 21st century, there will become more collective awareness of the planet, of the people that inhabit the planet, of the things that are around this planet, that there's some higher power that governs that. Not to say there isn't free will, but just to say that there are things that are out there that if your eyes are open, you see for the first time and realize it wasn't a coincidence. So I guess that's the level of my spirituality.
And for me, there is no such thing as coincidence. I rephrase it. I call it coincidence. Incidents that just happen to happen at just the right time in the synchronicity of the universe.
Yeah.
And I would venture that wasn't going through your mind during those 10 days necessarily. Probably didn't kick in until what? When you had the opportunity to employ hindsight, that you were able to see a little more clearly in that regard. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a perfect assessment. I think that, I had sort of four things that I was worried about during this period, and the fifth would be me. And I say that not being uh, self-deprecating, more just, I'm watching my girlfriend watch me die. What's she dealing with? I'm watching my mother, who's healthy, and I've always been healthy, watch me die. They don't know why, and they can't explain it. The only thing they could explain is it must have been something that came from outside of his body, because I
Mm.
was perfectly healthy months earlier. I thought about my daughter. Am I going to ever see her again? Do I tell her what's happening? I thought about, all the people in my life that, that are going to be impacted when I die. And then I thought about me. It was just, there was no other. There's a great book by Rich Divini, Devigny. He's an ex-Navy SEAL, called The Attributes. It really sums up what I believe about life. Is that, in a lot of ways, is that, he was interviewing people for a special ops job. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. He's now a recruiter for these special ops jobs. He was rejecting 90% of these people that applied, and they were all Navy SEALs who had been in rooms in that war. And he, he was rejecting 90% of them. And his bosses were giving him a hard time, saying, "Why would you say no to these people? These are trained soldiers." And he was saying he was having to say no to these trained soldiers and couldn't give them an explanation. So he came up with a set of five attributes that he believes that are true about every person that we're either you're born with or you learn very, very young at age. And really the biggest, he talks about adaptability and a bunch of other things that I can go into. Mental acuity, courage. He went through a bunch of things. He had 25 points that went into five categories.
Mm.
And, my attribute was just survive. Something happened, survive. There is no, you're already on top of the mountain. You're not climbing a mountain to survive. You're on top of it. It's just going to take willingness, effort, and time. I call it wet. I use that for everything I do. I just envision myself as already recovered. I
Mm.
came out of the hospital and I just said, this is just a matter of time. I was
Yeah.
taking 16 pills a day, and the first day out, I said I'm going to go to the office to my mother. She went crazy, and she said, "You can't be going to the office. You've been you almost died." And she said, "Let's go for a walk." And I said, "No, I'm going to go to the office and just pick up some things." Immediately, my heart rate went through the roof, and I think I just had a panic attack. But I thought I was dying, like they told me I probably would. And they were very dire predictions for me. And so every day, my mother picked me up on the street. I looked like a homeless person, sweating, crying, and awful. And then after that, I just said, "Mom, we're gonna walk, 30 minutes today. Then we walked 60 minutes. Then we walked 90 minutes. Then we walked more." It became a quest to get to 13 miles a day, which represented the number of days I was in the hospital. And so for the next 2 months, we did that every single day.
Mm.
I learned more about my mother than I've ever known. She's going to hate this, hate that she hears this, but I found out she went to Woodstock. I didn't, she graduated top of her class in, Quincy, Massachusetts, and she went to Woodstock. And I didn't know that. I didn't know about her relationship with her husband. I didn't, her second husband. I didn't know about some of the things she had gone through.
Mm.
It's really just a beautiful time to get to know my mother after, I've been working in Wall Street for 25 years at that point, and I missed 2/3 of the holidays at least, working 100 hours a week. I was there 120 hours, whatever it ended up being. So we just really got to know each other. And it was really just a beautiful time. But I was having nightmares every night. I didn't sleep at all. I was 20 pounds lighter, and came to come July 4th. We've been doing this now for 2 months. I was taking these 16 pills a day, and I said I feel fine. So I don't like taking pills. I never have. I'm going to stop. I announced this. I made a proclamation to Angie and to my mother. And my mother, Angie, was on many of these walks as well. I made a proclamation to them. I said, I'm stopping. I'm not taking the pills anymore. Let God. I'm not going to rely on the pharma industry. So that was July 5th. So to April 24th was when I first got this. And July 5th, I stopped taking all the pills. They were reticent about me doing that. Yet they said you have to trust your faith. And I said and trust your body. And I said I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the hospital on January 2nd, so 7 months after I had been poisoned, which we'll go through. I went to the hospital and they did a full checkup on me, full scan of every part of my body. They said, Eureka, the pills are working. And I'm not going to show you what I did to them, but I said, blank, God decided not harm. And I walked out. I never talked to them again. My quest between April, coming out of the hospital and January 2nd was to prove to people, because nobody believed me, anything I would say. It was in the middle of COVID. Everybody said, you probably had COVID and you got something worse. You look like you can't even recognize you. I know they didn't recognize me at the hospital. When I got there, she didn't even recognize me as a human. And they always thought I got drunk or it was on COVID. I got COVID. I just said, no, it's not true. And something happened. So I went through this cathartic again, like just very focused. I can become laser focused on things, and my only goal was to figure out what happened and to be able to prove to people that it was not of my own doing, because I knew it wasn't.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, folks, you need to get a copy of Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity Living for Today. We're talking with the author. His name is Matt Constantino, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, along with Matt Constantino. His book, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity Living for Today. You've got another book that you said actually should have come out first, and it's entitled Escape. Can you give us any kind of a timeline as far as when that might be out?
I think my publisher is expecting to get it out, by I think we were talking about sometime early 2026.
All right.
We're talking to a lot of people right now, and there's been some discussion around turning it into a movie. A lot of discussion around that. This book
Okay.
is really what came out of in my experience. As I started really just thinking about that everybody talks about gratitude. And people can talk about, I'm grateful for my family. I understand that. I recognize that as valuable. To me, the way I thought about this is, what am I grateful for today? So I capitalized today in every paragraph. It's really a bit of a workbook for me. And I
Mm.
did this with some friends that I met as I finally came to grips with what had happened to me. And I just wrote down my thoughts every day. What am I grateful for today? Not my family. I'm grateful for the sun came up and the flowers bloomed. I'm grateful for all sorts of different things, learns experiences. Some of them are trivial, some of them are meaningful. And I just encouraged a few friends that all knew each other to start journaling back to me. And I got to know these people that I'd never known in this way before. They all knew each other, so they were not afraid to share information or share their real deep thoughts. And I led it every day. I just said, we're going to do this every single day. And it's
Mhm.
branched out to a lot of different subgroups that they're doing it. Those people that started, and it's webbed out quite a bit. And I just think, what are you grateful? What's your strength today?
Yeah.
Right? What's your opportunity today? Not
Mhm.
the opportunity for the next 20 years. It's like, let's live for today. I guess that's what's differential. When I hear gratitude lists, it's always, maybe it probably works for some people. I needed a little bit different. I needed something a little bit different, and that's why I wrote this book. And it's allowed to be a handbook where you can just read all my stupid my silly thoughts. And maybe you laugh, maybe you won't. And some of it's serious, some of it's not so serious. It was just my first exploration of myself in a long time. So I've just been heads down since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I pursued of getting a job on Wall Street, and so this book really should be coming. Should be we have not marketed it or spoken to anybody about it at all. And we have many people I haven't told them it's been published, so it's really just out there. Really, it's supposed to come out as a follow-on, but it'll sit out there until the other book, Escape, comes out, which will be about my experience during COVID and then this poisoning that happened. That was is happening around the world. That's really where I think the key to understanding me and what my experience is. And you know, I talk about in the other book that life
Well,
happens. If you
yeah.
can perceive life as happening to you, for you, or through you. If it
Yeah.
happens to you, you're a victim. If it happens for you, it's for you to learn something, or through you, it's for you to learn something and then tell others. And that's really, I think, about life now. And I never talk about what happened to me as a victim, or talk about this is what happened,
Yeah.
and here's why it happened. And people need to understand that travel is dangerous right now.
Yeah. Matt Constantino is my guest, and his book, of course, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity, Escape, will be out in 2026. He is the managing partner of, it is pronounced Delos Capital.
Yep.
Delos Capital and the website, folks. You want to go there as well to find out more about the work that he's doing. deloscap.com/team/Matthew hyphen Constantino. And we'll be linked to that website as well so you can find out more. It's a story of paradise, poison, and a man's encounter with near certain death in the Caribbean as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, along with Matt Constantino, and Matt, it's interesting that you phrase it the way you do in terms of the different phases that we might go through. Back when I was 19, 20 years of age, which is going back a good 45 years, and I remember I had a short, brief little stint in victimhood. I was born legally blind, and of course, in 19 and 20 years of age, I wanted to get a driver's license to at least to operate a moped. Let me ride a moped. Come on, I can bicycle everywhere. What's the big deal? Couldn't get one. And of course, I was really upset, and I would say to my mom, "Look, I didn't label me legally blind. They did." In other words, this was on the state of Arizona. And that lasted a very short time because then I started looking for work. I started going back to school and so on and so forth. This was after high school graduation. And I look at the visual impairment I had. I now have a vision enough to see and drive because I had a lens implant in 96. And I look at those kinds of things. If I was still legally blind, it would be a perceived limitation, which is what I share with others. You mentioned James Redfield, who I've had on this program, and the Celestine Prophecy. One of the things that comes out to me so beautifully, and that's one of the reasons we have you on the program, is he talks about how we have messages for each other. And you have messages for those who are listening. You have messages for me, and vice versa. I have messages for you as well as the listeners and viewers. When you take a look at what happened to you, and I'll summarize this very briefly. I had a guest who had a stomach reduction due to stomach cancer. And I'm sure you understand the concept that we draw to us the experiences that we do for whatever the reasons are that we may or may not be conscious of. So let me ask you from a non-victim perspective, have you processed why you drew that experience to you that you now write about in Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity?
Yeah, it's much more in this the escape book that will come out, in the GSO book is really the result of that. Yeah, that was those are my processing coping mechanisms for this. I spent a year trying to just say, man up, don't worry, it happened, it's over, just forget about it. You don't need to deal with it. And yeah, the processing started by going to Arizona and studying shamanism at this retreat for people with PTSD, with drug addiction, with alcohol addiction, with abuse, all sorts of different things. I just started to think about like what happened to me. You would not, nobody would, not even my girlfriend and my mother would believe it. My best friend Jim would not believe it. Imagine living 6 months of your life where everybody thinks you're a liar. So
Hmm.
that was the hardest part to process. What the experience of mine taught me is it taught me what I already knew, is that people respond to incentives, and this was clearly a mafia-like organization that had direct ties to a lot of different government and the hospitals and the hotel. I think everybody. I know that everybody knew. I've had many instances where somebody has off the cup, where I tell them about it. Say, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time to people from that island." And the processing is a continual process. This book that I'm writing right now is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's harder than actually going through it. We're reliving it. I thought I was done, and then somebody told me I had to write the book, and a lot of people did. And so now that they actually believe me, and I have proof of it. And the British government just issued a tourist warning last Saturday about methanol poisoning, intentional methanol poisoning in the Caribbean. It's a very big article. This first time it's ever been issued a warning of travel to the Caribbean, as well as Japan and Russia and Indonesia. And I'm still processing it because it's now coming to light that this is happening. An actress went blind 2 weeks ago. She's been TikToking about it. She had 3 drinks in Indonesia. Laos had a huge, massive um, uh, epidemic there this last November, I believe. It's been happening over and over and over again. It's about making money.
Yeah.
The methanol is cheaper than regular alcohol. It's odorless and tasteless and colorless. So put a little bit in, you get a bad hangover. You overdo it, you die. And with healthy families, college kids were dying in the hotel rooms over and over. I watched many body bags go by me in 4 days. They just call it COVID. It was convenient.
We're talking with Matt Constantino, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity. And this particular book, the author offers a simple yet profound catalyst for daily reflection, affirmation, and action that is accessible for readers of all ages and from every walk of life. We hope you will go to the website that we mentioned earlier, which is deloscap.com/team/Matthew hyphen Constantino. Again, we'll be linked to that website as well on SoundCloud and YouTube. And we hope that you'll get yourself a copy of his book. I'm sure available on Amazon. Is it available audibly yet?
Do you know, I found out from somebody I went to high school with that it was even published. So I don't know yet. I have to go check it out.
Well, we look forward to that because
It's on Amazon. I know that.
yeah, yeah. Go to Amazon, folks, and put in again. The title is Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity: Living for Today. Author is Matt Constantino, Matthew Constantino. As we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. This is a story, Matthew, that I find fascinating because it isn't an isolated incident. I understand the need for anonymity of the locations and so forth. It wouldn't do much good to tell people the name of the island because that's not where it's happening exclusively. It's happening globally. And it is all about money. There's no question about it. And I I just find it fascinating that of all of the ways in which people are able to make money, they have to scam people and they have to poison people and they have to go through these processes. And at the same time, going back to my original question to you about, why you drew this to you, well, we draw to us the experiences that we do. My wife and I drew to us the experiences of being evicted from our home after 19 and a half years and then waiting 2 months for the house to close. And then we finally moved in. What an ordeal. I haven't sat down yet to process that particular aspect of it as to why did I do that to myself? And why did she do that to herself? And why did we do that to ourselves? But the reality is that, whether we consciously know the reasons why, we are where we are, and that's all we can deal with, right? That's why part of the subtitle of the book has to do with living for today, which brings to mind a good friend of mine, Billy Mandarino. He lives in Santa Barbara, California. He calls himself, and also his book is entitled The Nowist. And that's all he deals with is right here, right now. What happened in the past? Landlord and the 19 and a half years, blah, 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 blah. And what happens in the future, which I couldn't even name, there's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is right here, right now. Where are you emotionally and even spiritually? Where are you right now in your life, today, this moment as we talk?
Well, in my industry, it's been a very interesting time. So I'll start with that, and I'll go to the more important things. But it's been a very busy time because of like 2 years, we lost 2 years of our lives, and the companies, we've just trying to hold the people afloat to strive, not thrive. Yet now we're
Hmm.
thriving. And that's always a challenge, just dealing with expectations of have everybody shifted from our investments, and they've been fine. They've been very good actually. So, and sorry, Ann. On my on a personal level, I think I thought I had gotten through it and thought I had, set that in the past. And then I started writing this book, and so many things have come up because I did an outline, and that outline's four times longer than it was day one. Because I'm starting to remember all these things that, I'm starting to internalize what actually happened to me because it's just not believable.
Mm.
So I was at Yale for a long, long time, very, very well-known person there in the medical field. And she said if 1,000 people had got what you got, 1,000 people would be dead. So all I can say is that somehow somebody was looking over, something was looking over me. That's all I can say is everybody died at the hotels that we were at. Everybody.
Mm.
I'm fortunate that I was able to catch it after just one or two drinks and recognize it, as opposed to just saying, but at the end, I knew something was fundamentally different than I'd ever
Yeah.
seen before.
Matthew, can I ask you, what does it mean for you to be vulnerable? Because during that period, you couldn't have been more vulnerable, more exposed. But what about now? You're through it. You're done with it. Do you revert back to manning up, or are you still able to express yourself to the people around you that are the closest to you and be vulnerable? Because you and I both know, as guys, it's never easy, but it's so important.
You asked a very, very important question. I sort of, I had very, very great family support after my parents were divorced with my aunts, uncles, and grandparents. And I have two younger sisters, and I did spend a lot of time with them as my mother was working a lot. Um, Uh, I guess I'd always felt like I should never have to rely on anybody. And I proved that that was the case to get to some point in my life where things were great. Things were great, as great as I knew that could ever have imagined, and then some. In terms of what I was doing, I was I'm part of the 10%, as my mentor calls it, of people that actually like their jobs. And he's 80, turned 80 last Monday, and he said, only 10% of people like their jobs. So they're not going to throw me out until I'm on the ground, or I'm not functioning. And that's the way I feel about career. And then in terms of life, so I started to find mentors as I came out of this experience more than I ever had relied on other people before. And been willing to be vulnerable about this. I'm a very private person. You can't find me on the internet very easily. I don't use social media. I never have. Um, so this is, I guess, the way I've changed is, yeah, this is as full as that book. The first book, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity, is very vulnerable. So those are my raw thoughts. I didn't edit that book. That book was things I sent out every single day. So I've been willing to be vulnerable. People, I can't tell you how people have reacted in a very positive way and saying, now we know the real Matt. I'm not afraid to cry. And I burst into tears getting off a bus because I had lost a roller about my experience. And so I'm a bit more of an open book, whereas I always had to be the strongest person in the room. I'm not afraid to ask for help anymore. And
Mm.
that's something that was a real Achilles heel of mine. I was always trying to just say, I'll figure it out. And then I realized other people have already figured it out who could help me get there in a better and more efficient way, and a smarter way. But I guess with my self-reliance has become less important, and community and collectivity of minds has become more important.
Mm.
I surround myself by people that want to talk about, ideas and events, not things or people. And so we used to talk about, I used to talk about people incessantly, and just because it was, all I had was my work. And it's like I'm all pissed off at somebody or pissed or happy about somebody, and that was what I talk about. Now that doesn't happen anymore. It
Mm.
doesn't happen in my dinner nights where we're doing drum circles in my backyard, or people are dancing and playing music. It's with a different group of people that have a different appreciation for life, and it's something that I always aspired to, yet didn't feel like I had the opportunity to do, and now it's become a priority.
Mm.
Right.
I would venture that the people you work with at Delos Capital,
Yeah.
they're aware of all of this and they just accept you for who you are, or have you experienced a little standoffish from, especially some of the guys who go, "Yeah, I think you got a screw loose somewhere, Matt."
It was the hardest thing to overcome was the getting the proof as to what happened to me, and I was able to do it through some very deep contacts that I have there on that island that have own these other resorts, and they told me it happens all the time. They explained to me what had happened to me, and I was able to prove it from a doctor who was retiring, who I'd seen once, and he called up in a call when I was in the island, and he called and the phone got forwarded to Angie's phone, and she answered me, and he said, can I help you? Helpful. That didn't work. The hospital wasn't helping him. But I stopped by his office one day and I told him my symptoms. He said, immediately, you've been poisoned by methanol. And I said, what does that mean? And he said that every symptom you have is consistent with methanol poisoning. Methanol is antifreeze, for lack of it's 90% of methanol goes antifreeze.
Yeah.
And so he said, so why didn't everybody figure this out at this great hospital? He said that, unfortunately, doctors nowadays are trained on specific areas of the body. There's no holistic view. Anybody my age would have told you within a day this was the case. This is so obvious what happened to you. He said it's happened before over and over again. He said it's just that there's not an expertise on the body. There's expertise on specific areas. And the doctors that I met with didn't have that experience. It was not that my own fault at all. That's where the medical industry has moved and it shifted. And he said, no, it's a no brainer. This is what happened. And we never ended up getting the medical records from the hospital. So we can't prove it. With the medical records, because by the time I got to the New York hospital, I was free of all those chemicals. So, and we know what happened.
Hmm.
It's over and it's ready, lather, rinse, repeat. And it just happened 2 weeks ago. Now the British government's issuing warnings that people are taking it seriously now. And, I feel like I should tell the story as to what it really meant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are talking with Matt Constantino. We're talking about his latest release, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity Living for Today. He is the managing partner at Delos Capital, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D, and Matthew Constantino. I want to thank you so much for sharing this story. It's an important one to share, as well as sharing your own personal life and your own journey in that regards. We really appreciate you giving us the time. And thank you for gracing me with taking you through, I hope, a painless first podcast that you have ever done. I appreciate that. I actually enjoy it when my guests say, "Oh, this is my very first," and I'm going, "Oh, well, thank you for letting me be your first. I'll be gentle." So thanks
Thank
for
you for
being
being gentle. Thank you for being gentle. I didn't know what to expect, and nobody prepped me for this. So thank you.
You bet. Well, I have three final questions that I ask all of my guests, and I'll ask those of you in just a moment. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are also on YouTube where you can watch these conversations, but you can also get the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. And we hope that you will also get a copy of my book, Choices 5 Steps for Life, also available at Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. And if you could leave us a tip, we would be gratefully appreciative. Our tip jar is called PayPal. And if you go to the homepage at richarddugan.com, there are links to Amazon for choices and PayPal for that tip. Give what you can. If you can support us, we'll take energetic support as well. And we also ask that you take time during this, the decade of perfect vision, to spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice, which I will bet, Matthew, you listened to a lot. And we will probably have to have you back to go down that path, especially. But in the meantime, in between time, let's ask those three final questions of you. And the first of those is, who is Matthew Constantino?
Matthew is somebody who grew up with a very tight-knit family that stuck together through hard and great times, and always lifted each other up. And there were no expectations of me or anybody in my family. It was just to be a great family member, to be a good person and be kind. My daughter's the first thing I asked her about, what's the best thing about you? She said, I'm kind. And that's the way we were raised. I've achieved successes in some people's terms that are beyond my wildest dreams. And I guess this experience has taught me how to learn, how to appreciate those and respect those gifts that I've been given by this higher power, or whatever you believe in. So that's Matt. That's an ambitious person who, if you open the door, he runs to the wall.
Hmm.
It's already happened.
What gets you up in the morning?
My daughter, my desire to achieve the things that the things that I probably missed over the past 20 years, and as a function of just working as much as I did, to make sure that that I have a legacy that transcends just not just me. I tend to be very highly reflective on everything. I like to share that information. I'm not out there pushing any agenda. I just want people to talk more, because we're in a period where everybody's on their phones. At the moment, 12 people a day on the street on their phones. We all go to a restaurant, everybody's on their phones, and we've lost that touch. And that's if you look at any blue zone in the world, that's one of the three biggest keys to longevity. It's
Hmm.
community and being a
And,
true hospitality.
hmm. And finally, what was your best day?
My best day, my best day in my life.
You got it.
Well, not to be cliche, but the birth of my daughter, and it was surreal, and I can still remember every moment of that. That was the best day of my life. There are other, financially good best days, but really the best thing that changed my life was my daughter, who's my higher power. To be honest with you, and she keeps me young.
Hmm. Wonderful. Well, Matt, thank you again for joining us here on the program, sharing your book, Gratitude, Strength, and Opportunity Living for Today. And we look forward to connecting with you again down the road. I'd love to hear more about your spiritual search and study as you've gone through this process on your path. And we'll do that on another program. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lol. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life and you be in mine. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.